I'm joined now by Robin Bravender. She is a policy correspondent for The Insider. Robin, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
The pleasure is ours. So I was reading the possibility of Donald Trump, like it's a nightmare scenario. It is every liberal's worst dream that Donald Trump would somehow not only win in 2024, but he could govern as president of the United States from prison. Did I read that title correctly?
Absolutely. It was a question that came up in our reporting. And so we decided to ask some constitutional law experts, and their answer was a resounding yes, it's no problem. And in fact, it's been done before.
Okay, so there's two absurdities there. Let's start with the first one. It's been done before. Who, how, when, where, and why?
So Eugene Debs ran as a socialist candidate back in 1920. He was serving in an Atlanta prison. He actually did pretty well. Got a small slice of the voting electorate, did not win. And then Lyndon LaRouche ran in 1992. He was serving a sentence for mail fraud at the time, but he was a bit of a fringe candidate.
Okay, so I guess there's a fondness in my heart for Eugene Debs because he did say if there's a criminal element, he is of it. So I definitely get his position there. Little socialism insider. So tell us more from the liberal perspective, because I say from the liberal perspective because this sounds like it's written to actually terrify liberals, people who wanted to get back to normal, wanted to get back to brunch, and just wanted some peace and calm. But now they have in the back of their minds a lingering fear that this man, if everything went wrong, he could be president from prison. It's been done before. How could it happen now?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. And of course, we know that no charges have been filed against Trump, so this remains very theoretical. But you have a lot of ongoing legal investigations into him, some which appear quite serious. At the same time, he's telling his advisors that he wants to run in 2024. So if those things collide, he could run. There is nothing in the Constitution that bars someone in prison from running for president, as we know. It could get complicated, and we talked to folks about the logistics. He couldn't have campaign rallies from prison. He would have to rely on surrogates. And then he could win and potentially govern from prison if necessary. He would need to take the oath of office. He could do that from anywhere. We saw Lyndon Johnson take his oath of office on Air Force One. So there's precedent for some of these things.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. It's terrifying because we could totally see this play out just like that. We could see it play out where Donald Trump has Trump Jr. and Eric Trump at the rallies while he's in a jumpsuit. So we could see this playing out in a really possible fashion. But first, he has to get convicted in the first place. I mean, I think there's more of a chance for Donald Trump to win presidency from behind prison than to actually see him be held accountable for the things that he's done. So talk about it from that perspective. To what degree should people be concerned at this level when there's very seldom any accountability for rich white men in this country?
It is seen as extremely unlikely that Trump will be convicted. Of course, a lot needs to play out before any of this happens. But he's facing serious charges in New York and in Georgia. Some of the things we discovered in our reporting is the pardon issue. So if Trump were to be convicted, if it's a federal crime, he could perhaps pardon himself. He could perhaps designate the White House as his prison cell. He might have that power. So a lot of interesting hypotheticals to think about here. Another thing that came up that legal professors told us is Trump could use this prospect to run again. So if he in fact went to prison, he could say, I'm gonna try to run to get myself out of prison. That seems like a long shot. It seems like he wants to run anyway.
Stranger things have happened, though. You think about you think about Donald Trump becoming president in the first place. I mean, he's rich, we get that, but I mean, he presented in the exact opposite way that anyone would expect the president of the United States to have some requirements, right? You have to have some standards, and Donald Trump didn't have to worry about that. So he made it all the way to the White House on an absurdity. That's why this article exists, because stranger things have happened. So is this something that you feel they should be concerned about? And if so, what can be done? What does this say about how Democrats should approach politics?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have advice for Democrats, but it absolutely can be done. And if Trump has shown us anything, it's that he is willing to test the bounds of the Constitution and the law. And folks who know the Constitution and politics well said, we've learned to not count anything out with Donald Trump.
Wow, that is absolutely that is a terrifying notion. Tell us a little bit more then in expansion in terms of your work and what led you to this particular narrative.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had this started back when Trump was still in office, and folks were asking, what happens if he won't leave? This is one of those outlandish questions that people were asking at the time. So they said, what if Trump won't leave? Would Secret Service be responsible for dragging him out? And unfortunately, it didn't come to that. But Secret Service agents at the time were talking about it, and they weren't sure what the answer would be. So we know Trump left willingly. That led us to do some reporting about Secret Service and whether they would have to guard him if he went to prison. And that was another thing former agents were talking about. And they said, wow, absolutely, if Trump winds up in prison, the Secret Service would be charged with protecting him. So one thing led to another, and here we are.
Fascinating to think that their careers could lead them into prison in order to serve, their capacity as Secret Service agents. They would have to become essentially prisoners. What does this say? I mean, I think underlying this conversation really is this real fear that our system isn't really built on much other than our agreements. And that if you get somebody like Donald Trump in power who ignores those agreements, then it's almost like there's no adult in the room and everyone's looking at each other like, what do we do next? And we're in uncharted territory. Do you get that sensation as you observe and as you speak to all these people involved on the federal level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you talk to Democrats in Congress, they say Trump really showed where the limits of the Constitution are. And a lot of Democrats were hoping for massive reforms after Trump. As you know, we haven't seen much of that, and there is absolute gridlock on Capitol Hill. But Trump really did show what the limits are and what the problems are with the Constitution. But it doesn't look like a lot is going to be done about it.
Right. So we have the situation where everyone's looking around and realizing there's no adults in the room, but they don't want to do anything to fix it. Let's talk about really briefly, what are some of the things that Congress could do just as a matter of their constitutional authority to actually fix some of these problems of having a strong man like Donald Trump, who, if we get a strong man in power, who ignores the norms and institutions all the way to the point where they don't leave office, we don't really have protocol of how to solve that. So what are some of the things that Congress should be addressing when we look at these very serious issues?
Yeah, well, congressional Democrats would tell you there is a lot they want to do to increase the checks and balances and increase Congress's role. Trump really did strengthen the reach of the executive branch. And Congress has always been willing to do that before, but Trump is a different creature, and a lot of Republicans are unwilling to do anything that would be seen as retribution against him. So again, we're probably not going to see a lot of action on that front.
Wow, and so in order to, that's strange because they see the problem. And I think people do understand the scale of the problem. Like we're really talking about the whole ball game here, the American democratic experiment, and we're testing it. We're doing a stress test with Donald Trump, and the institutions are looking like, well, yeah, maybe we can accommodate him. But I guess my next question would be, can they accommodate the next iteration of him? What's coming next? Because Donald Trump, a lot of the things he didn't get accomplished was because he was an oaf. But what about the next strong man who's very efficient? Is anybody talking about that?
Yeah, I get the sense on Capitol Hill that their current concerns are still Trump, and there's a concern from Democrats about what happens if someone else comes like this in the future. We've seen what can happen in terms of the executive power, but then they talk about, well, there's potentially Trump again in 2024. So it's not so much a hypothetical as Trump coming back for the moment.
Coming back. And then not only that, not only will he be able to come back, but he would potentially be able to do so even if he's incarcerated. Robin, you have written like this story rather is so terrifying, especially when you think about some of the priorities of a lot of people across this country. Thank you so much for coming on and discussing it. Tell everyone how they can get up with you.
Oh, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter. It's just at @rbravender, or email me anytime, rbravender@insider.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.